Kneel before Zod!
Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, and welcome to the 400th episode of Taking Issue! So many comics, so many stories, jokes both hilarious and corny, and all throughout, the reason anger management counselors fear me. Those who have watched long enough may have noticed that my 100 episodes concern Cassandra Cain, one of my all-time favorite characters. 100 saw me more or less repeat myself about that orphan retcon. For Ep 200, I, and a more successful alternate universe version of myself, looked at a young adult graphic novel with a different, but not at all bad take on Cass, and episode 300 had me bound by some ominous voice to review an arc in Young Justice concerning their take on the character. If you watched the end of last week's episode, you'll see that I've more or less been set upon to review the current Batgirl ongoing, and those more attentive in my audience might know why I'd be hesitant. Sure, Cass's good canon is more or less restored, but because everything is canon now, Tinyin's unfortunate fingerprints remain. After years of being screwed around by DC, people claiming Orphan was just like Cass, when all observable evidence showed otherwise, why wouldn't I be skeptical? Weepy Shakespeare quotes and Insta-friendships didn't do anything dynamic, why keep it? Then I was like, hey, maybe this won't be so bad. But I've been disappointed so many times before, and putting her in the old Batgirl suit felt like the cheapest, easiest pandering to lure in fans like me. With no signs of any substantive improvement, why pony up more of my money? Why put myself through all this when I've been ignored, misinterpreted, and lambasted for having standards? Why simply take people's word for it? But what if I'm wrong and stayed ticked for no reason? Then I'm expected to think that I was always making a mistake, when it's really some schmucks expecting people to accept whatever. On top of everything else wrong in the world, why can't they get this one thing right? Huh. And I was just about to say I was torn. Too obvious! Well, folks, this is happening. Whether it's because I'm a cartoon now, or something with the rage ring I haven't used in years being on the fritz, maybe both, or that f***ing Illuminati. Yeah, you're getting two hosts again. And even though I'm furiously doubtful this book will be any good, I'm still willing to give it a fair shot. So let's start taking issue with the first arc of Batgirl 2024, Mother, and see if this relaunch makes us want to turn the page, or set those pesky gophers on fire. What gophers are you? They know who they are! Issue 1's cover is, lazy! No, it's not. Just uncomplicated. Cass swinging across a large bat symbol on a white background, and kind of evokes the very first Batgirl #1, but obviously with less detail. Not bad, and at least a decent homage. Written by Tate Bromble, with art by Takashi Miyazaki and Mike Spicer, we begin in an empty floor of a skyscraper, Lady Shiva saying she never wanted a daughter. You talk like I wanted a mother. Well, you kinda needed one to, exist. Her narration box says that a glance, a smile, touching her earring, and her heartbeat are all ways Shiva conveys her love for Cass, but she's not buying it. What does she have to do to prove it? Turn you into a simpering husk that's obsessed with some blue-haired nobody from the Narrows? Because that was someone else's idea of love, and sister, that ain't love!
Roddy, settle.
Things aren't made any better with the dead security guard that apparently interrupted Shiva's privacy, with B-Girl warning her against killing. But hey, this one's a freebie, I guess. Shiva seems to yield, something she doesn't usually do. That certainly explains all those tickets on her driving record. She tries to explain why she called her daughter in, but Batgirl tells her to leave town, not wanting her to interfere with the good life she has in Gotham. Shiva says she's here to protect her from a whole bunch of trained killers who are after them both, and body language suggests she's not lying. So maybe that's the surprise of such honesty giving her a stroke, because that's what the vigilante's body language seems to be saying. You speak this language too. These touches and glances you mime, you deceive. I'm not falling for the trapped in an invisible box trick again. This is all probably just some feint for some evil plan, so she doesn't believe her story. But Shiva's already got them a ride out of town and doesn't want to see her dead, because the people after them will also go after her surrogate family. When she grabs her arm, like a human switchblade, Batgirl pulls a bladed batarang. Note to self, switchblades with batarang-shaped blades. Hey, I just said that! It was my idea! Well, doesn't that also mean it's my idea? Just as our heroine pulls away, a handful of blue-clad ninja crash through the doors, saying that what is buried will always come to light. So they're all really bad gravediggers? Batgirl's about to take off, telling her mom good luck, but Shiva pulls her back by the cape, saying there is no luck, only the two of them, that their survival is dependent on working together, and then Cass slugs her. Which is apparently a good thing, because it means she's prepared to take on the ninja who look like special Cobra goons seen in one episode of G.I. Joe. Who can I punch to prove that I can fight trained assassins? I'll try Googling that later. Young Miss Cain focuses on striking Shiva while narrating her origin, born and raised to be a perfect killer, knowing how to read the body before learning to speak, able to predict moves, detect lies, and see the final dilation in the eyes of a man she kills. A reference to her good origin killing a crook named Faizul. None of these things were her choice, much like now having to fight these masked enemies on a second 2-page spread. She did, however, choose to be Batman's daughter. And to be an orphan? That name is a basic term for someone without parents. For all we know, this is the closest this story gets to even vaguely referencing that iteration. Well, I'm keeping the machete! I mean, I usually do anyway, so... As parent and child start working together, Shiva spinning Batgirl around to hit their foes in quick succession, narration goes on that she chooses to hold back from lethal force, and that no one will ever take being Batgirl from her. As long as Tiny and Dan DiDio stay out of the picture. Read me. I do not lie. Well, it's a book, so reading is kind of mandatory, isn't it? After taking the group out, even more crash in, so the two jump out of the building, Batgirl gliding them across the city. And the way they're keeping aloft with Shiva off to the side like that, even if you can say it's a specially made cape, it still seems a little... Take that, physics. Anyway, the guys in the blue PJs are known as the Unburied, legendary warriors unseen for centuries, but are now out for blood, including Shiva's and her daughter's by extension. And Mama's protecting her kid because only she's allowed to take Cassandra's life. And she wonders why she's not invited to Thanksgiving dinner. She has them landing within spitting distance of the Gotham Temple for the Order of Shiva, where she revived Cass after their fight in issue 25 of the original Batgirl title. This nicely establishes that history, so...
Urge to kill, fading, fading.
Since they can't fight the Unburied's immense numbers, her followers will take them to her ride out of town. And Cass just up and disappears, which she blames on her father's influence. But this alleged Batgirl pops right back up when the temple explodes and they rush inside. Shiva's never really cared for her followers before, but they proved supportive when the world turned its back on her. What? The egotistical woman who kills indiscriminately wasn't embraced by people who mostly don't want to be assassinated? You do go on! The only one barely alive enough is a high priest who warns them of a long-distance attack, an arrow that Shiva snags in the air before it can impale B-Girl. More arrows fly in, taking the priest out as the Unburied charge. Shiva, who took one of those arrows in her side, tells them to focus only on her, since her daughter means nothing, which Cass can tell is a lie. Despite all the terrible things she's done to others and Batgirl herself, she doesn't want any more killing, so she joins her mom in her fight, and repeating the no luck, only us line, accepting they'll only survive together. This is definitely going to count as both her birthday and Mother's Day gift. Issue number 2 is a more detailed cover that's got a lot going on. Our title heroine and some bats against a fiery background with the image of her mom and what looks like the form of a heron. Maybe Shiva has a trout in her coat pocket. As round 2 begins, Cassandra narrates that she's no oracle, but her sight is her prophecy, her fists, her medium. There are several reasons why her psychic hotline business didn't work out. She says she writes her opponent's fortunes and will always make her own, which sounds a little too poetic. What's wrong with that? Because it reminds me of Detective Comics at Rebirth and it really ticks me off. Yeah, but at least here it seems more competent than ham-fisted. When they've beaten this wave, Batgirl decides they need the Bat family's help. But Shiva warns the Unburied will see them all killed, and the enemies ahead of them aren't like the pawns they just defeated. Shiva's injuries still need to be treated, and the ride leaves the city at sunrise, so Batgirl has another option. Her pillow fort in the Batcave that reads, "No assassins allowed." Then why would she let Shiva in? It says no assassins. She can at least have one. At the still-burning temple, an unburied fighter, who dresses differently so you know he's more important, has killed 2 firefighters who were looking for survivors. Why he did it is unexplained. Maybe this was to denote his speed and skill, and him crying as he closes their eyes while saying their sacrifice will not go unseen is meant to hint at some depths of his motivations or character. But it really just seems confusing. Also, he's blind, because why not? Meanwhile, Batgirl has taken her mom to a Vietnamese restaurant, run by an older woman, Ba Bao, along with her grandsons, introducing her mom as Sandra. As the old worn nurse Ba Bao stitches the arrow wound, she mentions how the vigilante showed up one day like a stray cat, hence giving her the nickname Kitty Cat, and seemed to like their food. Feels a lot like the shadow of the Batgirl, how she was taken in by an old Asian lady who ran a restaurant. Yeah, it does seem similar, and Ba Bao is even a martial artist as well. Is that a problem? No! Then why do you sound angry about it? This is just how I sound! Cassandra asked to learn Vo Vietnam, a Vietnamese fighting style, and in exchange has been training the grandsons in her own various techniques. It helps them get by in this uncertain world, and tells Sandra she should be proud of the woman her daughter has become. Shiva mentions having to leave and how difficult her child is being, and is determined to more or less make her obey. Forgive me if I keep mispronouncing Ba Bao, but she mentions how Vo Vietnam teaches the principles of force and flow, hard and soft. Batgirl may know how stern her mom can be, but a benevolent hand is another matter, and the pain that causes is probably why Kitty Cat never mentioned her. If there's to be any healing between them, Sandra must first bend, then listen, then speak. She bends her elbow when she's about to throw a punch. Does that count? Over a mother-daughter meal, Shiva elaborates on the Unburied, at least what her own mother once told her. Centuries ago, 100 monks were killed in a war and buried in unmarked graves. From those graves grew blue flowers with divine chi, and eventually survivors of the conflict discovered that consuming the petals endowed them with powerful abilities of sight, healing, strength, and more. If that includes shooting fireballs, the Unburied may be targeting the Mario Brothers too. They figured the flowers were infused with the chi or life force of their slain brethren, When outsiders approached, wanting the flowers for themselves, more fighting ensued. More blood spilled. Thus, more flowers bloomed.
If they're fertilized by blood, why aren't the flowers red?
I don't know, chi stuff? Anyway, eventually the earth itself quaked, as if in response to these battles, and swallowed the monks and the flowers. But they didn't die, rather returning unburied after centuries, and keen on some vengeance. Why now we'll have to wait, as the warriors have found the restaurant after having one of their own eat a petal and lead them to Shiva and B-Girl, and apparently die after rapid aging. Sheesh, these guys have a lousy health plan.
They bust down the door, and their troop leader, whom Batgirl senses gives her mother a second of fear, is Calden the Unseen, asking Shiva to please come with them and avoid violence.
I thought insurance salesmen were pushy.
The restaurateurs make the decision for them, hurling kitchen knives at the intruders, since it's enough that Sandra is her friend's mom, and we get a really neat face-off panel as the two sides charge. Just as she's suggesting to Cassandra that she should leave town and be wary of anyone promising salvation, Bao is walloped by Calden, which ticks off the vigilante something fierce. She lashes out in fury, using batarangs like Wolverine claws. Hey, she's a Hugh Jackman fan!
Unfortunately, she can't read him like she can the others, seeing that none of his movements are wasted. Not only does Calden dodge her every strike, he incapacitates her in a few hits, too fast for her to avoid. Calden says he only knows pain.
Please, no more pain. Shouldn't she be asking that?
Ow! Stop pummeling me! It's really painful!
Shiva delivers a massive kick to give Batgirl a breather, helping her up since it seems she can't see, and maybe that's why her dialogue bubble has those inner lines like Calden, which is an interesting touch to denote a similar incapacity. As the brawl continues, hey, Bao got back up, good for her. Shiva takes her outside, despite Cass not wanting to abandon her friends. They make it to the train yard, getting on the right one as the young woman blacks out a couple times, and thinks of her family, in particular Barbara, Stephanie, and Bruce, as they ride out of the city. And man, look at Cassie's face. It's like the artist accidentally dripped a bit too much ink, but made it work. Meanwhile, back at the restaurant, Bao and her boys are all down for the count. Calden addressing the elder grandson that 3 people have already died and that no further lives have to be taken, and asks where their targets are going. It's a life-threatening situation, but the kid just can't help saying they made a wrong turn at Albuquerque. It does make it seem like maybe his grandma and brothers didn't make it, but remember, there were 2 firemen and one of the unburied that kicked it already, so that's probably who he's talking about. Issue 3's cover sees the Star fighting off multiple unburied on a train. One in a headlock, another kicked in the face, and another bashed into the window.
No ticket.
Cassandra is looking at a family photo of Bruce, Alfred, and all the crew. Except Damien, I think. Now, this looks more like Tim because, well, he's smiling. Although this could be Tim, in which case Jason wouldn't be in it.
But we, whatever, digress. Shiva offers her help with her injuries, but this is a woman who killed her ability to love or care about anyone but herself, using all manner of misdirection and manipulation, so she rebuffs her. They argue about Batgirl leading their enemies to Bao's family and how easily Calden defeated her, wounding her ego. She denies the idea that there will always be someone better, as well as being anything like Shiva, showing off the family pic that this is who she is. Naturally, Shiva has to laugh this off, that she learned their language without them learning hers, and that she fooled them into thinking she belongs. So Batgirl responds in the only appropriate way, kicking her mom into the next train car. She didn't fall to the ground and crying for 5 panels, so that's a good sign.
So are you gonna relax anytime soon, or
Probably not.
In the next car happens to reside what remains of the Order of Shiva Gotham chapter, bowing when Cassandra is introduced as Shiva's daughter. She masks back up, and the people who more worship Shiva as an ideal are told to hold off on the praise. Then she meets someone who looks just like the priest full of arrows from the temple. Didn't you die?
This is comics. Who hasn't?
This is Jayesh, another high priest, who finds out this way that his twin brother died, which he seems to take kind of hard. But after Shiva, seeming to maybe care, commends his bro's efforts, which saved her daughter's life, he's even more honored to meet Cass, and takes her to get healed. On the way, she attempts some small talk, where Jayesh explains that he's from Gotham, has a daughter, and they joined after Shiva saved them from some people who had killed his wife, people who Musan later terminated, and his brothers soon followed them. He's surprised Shiva never mentioned to Cass what the Order does. Ah, how very Shiva, yet not Shiva, which is quintessentially Shiva.
Ow, that hurt my brains.
While their idolized assassin is known by some as evil, others consider her a restorer, and the Order studies and learns from her ways in order to help those in their communities, protecting, healing, be they fleeing violence or choosing it, in order that they may better themselves as either fighters or healers. There are chapters across the globe, and they all strive to challenge the world for its benefit.
But the killing people part, that doesn't bother anyone, Smiley McTunic.
In fact, a cornerstone of the Order's text and practices is based on the night Shiva revived Cass back in issue 25. Jayesh is fascinated by the act and considers everything about Shiva, even her darker attributes, because they represent what's possible in self-improvement.
So I guess all the murder is just taking the bitter with the sweet, huh?
Confident that their foes will be no match with a hero like Batgirl at their side, he starts gathering ingredients to heal her wounds, saying that she should be proud of her mom for inspiring all this. We're also in talks for a crime drama on Fox. Your mother's character will solve crimes alongside a deli owner who reads a lot of mystery novels. It'll be a lot like Castle, but with more kung fu.
She starts drinking a tonic to dull her pain and accelerate healing when she spots a guy from the League of Shadows looking for a bathroom, and instantly considers him a threat. She tackles him into the next car, then proceeds to take out even more shadows on 2 consecutive 2-page spreads, all while Shiva tries to explain these are allies against the unborn, and injuring them only hurts the overall effort. Almost like this is something she could have mentioned earlier.
Cass' narration repeats from earlier how cruel and uncaring her mom is, seeking to provoke and not giving a flip for anyone. Everything Cassandra is not. She is Barbara's will, Alfred's care, Steph's heart, and,
Jason's grit? Damien's guts? What? Okay, Grayson's faith and Bruce's pride, I get it, but this makes it seem like she got those traits from them, as if she learned grit from Jason or fortitude from Damien. But that was always part of her.
Yeah, but maybe it's just to reinforce the bond she's made with others. I mean, stuff's happened since I dropped Bat titles from my pull list, so maybe she did learn something. On a splash page, she declares that she's Batgirl, everything she mentioned and much more, as she fights her way into another car. I almost feel like this page could fit in between the 2-page spreads, almost looking like a single image across multiple pages. Then you have to swap around the narration, and I think that would hurt the flow of reading when juxtaposed to the imagery itself. Anyway, joined by Shiva and Jayesh, she sees a cozy scene of 3 people at a table, one of whom explains the presence of the League of Shadows, Nissa Al Ghul, Raish's other daughter. So, halfway point. How we feeling?
Angry.
About anything in particular, or just a
Default setting?
Yeah, I figured. Issue 4's cover sees an unmasked Batgirl in the rain, wiping some blood from her lip. Enemies of her enemy.
You and I are enemies now.
In this cozy little scene, Cass tries to do like Batman, read the room and plan for the worst-case scenario. She recognizes the woman in the visor, Angel Breaker, a shadow with ties to Black Canary and the Wildcats character Zealot, but not the guy in the suit. The odds don't look good, but she doesn't plan on failing her pointy-eared father. Also, Nissa references how Cass killed her years ago, back when she was turned evil, but adds the qualifier supposedly for some reason. Like maybe there are some things that aren't canon in this new everything is canon universe, but then she casts doubt on the whole brainwashing angle. But I guess this is all meant to be some kind of joke, but setting aside that coming back from the dead is kind of an Al Ghul trend.
Which must mean most comic book characters are Raish's kids, which opens up some really unpleasant implications.
Cass preemptively turns down whatever it is they were going to suggest, not waiting to hear from known adversaries and whoever the suit is. This is Wu Lin of the Blood, who summons warriors made of, well, I'm guessing blood, in case the young bat wants to fight.
Then Angel Breaker threatens her with her sword. Also called Angel Breaker, which is what she named herself after, so original this one, which can absorb and return attacks. Batgirl imagines how she may be able to overcome these opponents until Shiva silently advises against it.
Jayesh chimes in that they're basically doing their enemy's work for them. I may be the lowest of you, but I retain my common sense. Regardless of that time I tried to use the toaster to charge my smartphone. He pleads with B-Girl to aid in their cause, so they don't lose what the Order has done for so many. Nissa concurs that the unburied are a threat to all present and those associated with them, like Wu Lin, who was peacefully chilling in East Asia when the Blue Monks stirred him into action. Their foe seems to have extensive knowledge of them and their operations, for a war they had nothing to do with. But her dad Raish may have sorta started it. He had led his forces against the monks centuries back, killing them and giving rise to the first of the miraculous blue poppies. Similarly to our heroine, Nissa states she's not her father, and would rather use the League of Shadows for good, without committing genocide. Cass notices a shadow walk in, but his movement reveals he's actually one of the unburied in disguise, so pins him against the wall. Unfortunately, he's hopped up on chi flowers and self-detonates, destroying the cab and derailing the train. More swarm in to take out any stragglers, with Shiva taking a few down and rallying her daughter. Your enemies will not defeat themselves. Yeah, you gotta pay extra for that, subscribe to their mailing list, it's a whole thing. They're confronted by two Grand Masters of the Unburied like Kalden, Nergui the Unknown, and Chodak the Unbowed.
We put our faith in blast hard cheese. Big, McLarge, huge.
Slab bulkhead.
Joined by Nissa, Angelbreaker, Wu Lin, and his blood soldiers, they all get to brawling on another two-pager. After a bit of the big guy enjoying tossing people aside like confetti, Shiva pulls her child into one of the overturned cars, where she tends to her stitches opening up. Kaz points out that everyone is dead, death seeming to follow Wu-san wherever she goes. But the assassin gives the Popeye excuse. She is what she is. By contrast, Cassandra resists her nature, having gone by several names. Kasumi, Blackbat,
Orphan!
One is my name. The other is not.
Yeah, I know, I don't like it either, but at least it's just one identity among many instead of her first.
But it's still her worst.
Well, no argument there.
Shiva says she's wasting her energy aspiring to be someone else, asking who she even is, as she takes out a blue flower petal she had on hand and starts chewing it into mush.
I wonder if it tastes like blue raspberry or blueberry.
She smears it onto her wound, and instead of explaining where she got it, she changes subjects, saying she knows Batgirl hates what Shiva is, and recalls Babao's wisdom of soft and hard. But the killer lost her soft when she gave birth to her daughter. The girl took it all, and resembled Shiva's sister, and perhaps she wanted to hate her so it would be easier to leave her with that man. If it ends up being that version of David Cain that spoke in pseudo-poetic drivel, I can't see anything making a decision that dumb any easier to live with.
But in all these years, she never forgot Cass, the soft life that came from so much death, and caressing her face, Shiva apologizes.
What?
Cassandra can tell she's not lying, but has trouble finding the words to respond, instead trying to focus on planning for their dire situation. Chodak finds them, so they start working together again to take him on, but things get complicated when Nergui joins, attacking Cass with giant scissors. After Kalden makes a surprise appearance and knocking Shiva out, he tells his cohorts they'll deal with the rest later, but for now, they'll be taking the assassin. Batgirl throws a bat-shaped object, but misses Kalden, who decks her. He says her mom is sufficient payment, so the vigilante should head back to Gotham to live a long life, rather than a long death at their hands. She eventually gets up after blacking out once or twice, knowing this is a worst-case scenario, and wondering what Batman would do.
Probably brood about how he has to take on insurmountable powerful forces all on his own, and choose to ignore he has Justice League demigods on speed dial.
Jayesh rides up on a motorcycle, saying to forget the others, and asking if she's staying or joining him in going after Shiva. After a panel of Nissa standing there haggard and calling her the one who is all, Cass figures a better question would be what would her mom do? So she hops on the bike and takes off, ending the issue. If you're unfamiliar with the whole one who is all thing, toward the end of Cassie's first title, it was retconned that David Cain fathered her as part of a larger plan for Raish's League of Assassins, giving her a kind of messianic vibe for that group. Not one she appreciated or even wanted, of course. Issue 5's cover has Cassandra behind several flowers, so either they grow really tall or she's become really tiny all of a sudden.
You're really short. I know.
Note to self, movie idea, Honey, I Shrunk the Bat Family.
If there isn't a scene of her fighting an ant, we riot.
You'd probably riot anyway, wouldn't you?
I neither confirm nor deny.
Thanks to forced perspective, what looked like a kind of batarang was actually a tracking beacon that Batgirl stuck to her mom, leading her and Jayesh to a cave system 80 miles outside Gotham. While the priest hangs back, she walks inside, glides down a ways, and evades sentries as she starts spying on Unburied. how they train, gather necessities, collect information, but also how they live as a society, with families and children playing. Really makes you wonder how long they've been here. Maybe they got nests like this all over the world, but there are homes, and I think even a temple, that had to take a while to construct.
Maybe Batgirl should take notes so Bruce can learn something.
She spots the Grand Masters and follows them, Calden chiding the other two for going off script, which is how Chodak nearly died at Shiva's hand.
I just thought it would add depth to my character if I equated fighting with eating and spoke in an Irish accent. I mean, you won't let me wear my oversized novelty cowboy hat. I need something. The League of Shadows, Shiva's followers, and Wulin's blood mastery all down for the count, which is only the beginning of their leader's plan, which they're expected to follow to the letter. As for Batgirl, Calden figures she's twice learned she's not much of an heir to Shiva.
Which is why Wusan's gonna start a reality show where contestants compete in outlandish challenges to be her new heir, this summer on TLC. I think that tracker really should have had a silent mode, but the enemy already found the bug since Chodak and some unburied goons surprised Cass.
Fridge, large meats.
Punt, speed chunk.
Butch, deadlift.
She takes a couple of hits from the big guy, but recalling her mother's earlier statement, gets to her feet and into a butt-kicking stance. She drops the squad of underlings pretty quickly, making Chodak psyched at having a worthy challenger.
Feels weird that he's saying that when he was complaining earlier how Shiva almost killed him.
Maybe, but most people want to survive a challenge, you know?
Speaking of surviving, we assume he somehow does, after Batgirl delivers a flurry of strikes, then closes with some small explosives that send her flying backward. Since she hates killing, I guess these are the kind of massive explosions that only knock someone out. This apparently lands her in a field of the famed blue poppies, and up against Nergui, who only needs to dodge an attack, then toss some sleeping powder to bring the cape down. She has a whirlwind of memories, including meeting Shiva back in her old title, defeating her in the 25th issue, her own birth somehow, which maybe is supposed to be non-diegetic, since it's in square panels, and memories of being orphan!
Urge to kill rising.
Ah, son of a gonna son of a take a friggin' swordfish and tap dancing on a fence while taking empty beer cans and shoving them right in the all in front of a theater full of tax accountants.
Feel better?
Only slightly.
Okay, does this help?
Not really.
What about this?
Getting there.
She wakes up in a more empty dream space, finding fellow Batgirl Stephanie Brown there, likely a callback to how Cass had a similar experience twice before the reboot, seeing her best friend during a near-death experience. With everything that's happened, Steph says maybe a dream is the best place for Cassandra to get some stuff off her bat symbol. Whenever Shiva shows up in her life, Cass feels like a lost child with no control, for reasons she can't fathom, since she didn't meet her until she was much older. David Cain didn't offer any answers, and in the years she spent trying to unlearn his parenting, she hoped maybe whoever her mom was a good person, at worst simply a pawn in David's machinations. But upon finding Shiva to be so manipulative and heartless, she turned out to be no different than who her biological dad trained Cassie to be. Hey, tactical gear! Definitely OG David Cain. That's a good sign, right?
Yeah, I guess it is. Unless he starts whimpering about lemmings like a bad poet with brain damage.
Shiva is everything Cass hates, what she was and somehow what she is and will become. So she can't love her because those are the parts of herself she doesn't love. But she does love her mom for being those parts. It doesn't make any sense, but she figures if she can save Shiva, she can save that little kid in the pink dress who lost control of her life. This venting has made her feel better, and worse, but the dream's over, and she wakes up hanging upside down in front of her mom in a cavern. Did you get your beauty sleep? Yes, but it looks like you could use another 10 minutes. Issue 6's cover has parent and child tied up back to back as bats swim around and what looks like Calden about to bring down his sword upon them. This was the best family therapist their insurance would cover. Cass's narration muses if being a mother or daughter is purely biological or if there's more ode involved. Sounds like she's worried about whether this has to be filed with her taxes or something. What then are these ties that bind us, mother? Rope? She asks why the unburied are after Shiva when Calden the Unseen walks in, apologizing to B-Girl for the circumstances and how brutal this has all been, and that Shiva has not been all that forthcoming in these matters.
Prepare to reminisce.
His ancestors were founded in peace, hidden away in a sunny Himalayan mountain valley, open to any who happened to find it. Then Ra's al Ghul's war happened, blue flowers grew from the monk's blood, and Ra's returned to take the plants, with his forces and Wulin's ancestors. Even after their land was swallowed up, they remained peaceful, rebuilding underground out of fear to avoid plunderers.
Forgetting the sun once favored us. But then it started hanging out with that Raisin Bran crowd, carrying around scoops and wearing sunglasses, and suddenly we weren't good enough for a giant fireball in space anymore.
Shiva was the first outsider in generations to find them, and they stuck to tradition, welcoming her in, feeding her, letting her train with them. So naturally, she broke that trust by stealing their flowers, using them for her own ends like in times past.
She also spoiled the endings to a bunch of movies they hadn't seen yet. She really is evil, you guys. Unlike before, the Unburied decided to go with violence as their first option. They scattered across the world, setting up nests to gather intel and plan for the time to strike. Recently has been quite opportune, with Ra's al Ghul currently dead and his minions in shambles, Bloodmaster Wu having become complacent, and Lady Shiva without allies, save for her pseudo-religion and her daughter. Her betrayal is what sparked their attack, after Caldon's people had been denied the sun for so long. For what is buried will always come to light. He takes off, leaving some guards until their sublime leader arrives to have a chat with them. This news infuriates Cassandra, confirming she can't trust Wu-san, that this is all her fault, asking why she hurt peaceful people. Seeing the pain and reluctance, she can tell Shiva is being truthful when admitting Caldon was right. She wanted a new challenge, because she is what she is. Also, I'm the reason the Big Bang Theory got 10 seasons.
Monster!
Jayesh interrupts their argument, freeing them and getting a thankful hug from our heroine. But the generational argument resumes, Shiva wanting to burn the entire community, and Cass, of course, saying no to the whole killing thing. Again, they're interrupted by the High Priest. Except this time he's telling them to tell his daughter she's loved, as he's killed by Nergui. Batgirl wants to fight, but Shiva pulls her out of there, sharing in her want to brawl, but they need a more tactical approach to defeat the potions and weapons expert, like burning their supply of sacred flowers. Cass thinks that'll just make things worse, and opts to instead beat the odds and fight their way out. They dive into a river to avoid their pursuers, with a couple of blue monks getting swept away to catch them.
Idiots. I know their clan's been living underground for centuries, but you'd think they'd have worked in some swimming lessons in all that time.
It's mentioned that the Unburied's leadership is based on whom combat determines is the strongest, meaning that whoever their leader is, they managed to beat the formidable Caldon, making them too dangerous for Cassandra at the moment. For now, Shiva wants to leave and destroy the poppies along the way. Beagle rejects this idea of ruining more people's lives, destroying more sacred things. But the Lady Wu-san angrily says she won't lose the daughter she considers sacred.
Then how'd she let DC pull that orphan?
Shiva got retooled there too, right?
Still
what?
Shut up!
The assassin can't see why, after all the trouble Cass has gone to save her, she resists her instruction. The young vigilante wants to trust her mom, but trying to do so causes pain every time, and she is tired of pain. Hey, kind of like how I've been feeling about the whole retcon thing. So she'll help her escape the cave, but after this, never wants to see her mother again. Shiva agrees, but asks what her strategy is. Then Batgirl masks up, saying it'll be something her father taught her. I just need billions of dollars, weeks of prep time, and a snarky British butler. As those dozens of glowing red eyes may indicate, just when Chodak is sending out the Unburied to find them, Cass has somehow caused the many, many bats to swarm, overwhelming the warriors. No luck. Only us. Hope she's including those hundreds of bats, or they may start to feel unappreciated.
It's distraction enough for the two to get solid hits on the Grand Masters, particularly Caldon, whom Batgirl focuses on, dedicating her attacks to Bao, her family, and Jayesh. They warn him to stay down as they grapple their way to freedom, but they wouldn't exactly be effective antagonists if they did that, so chase them out of the cave. Instead of joining her kid on the getaway bike, Shiva decides to yield no more, face the Unburied, and close the wound she opened. If it kills her, at least her daughter, her softness, will live.
No, Mom! I choose you! I choose you! Now get in the Pokeball and let's go! She sends her off, telling her to seek out Benjamin Turner, aka Bronze Tiger, to ask about someone named the Jade Tiger, and offers a blessing from Mahakala before facing the oncoming warriors. Narration says a mother isn't simply someone who births you, but one who teaches, nurtures, though perhaps causing pain, but in the end sacrifices for her child. Cass doesn't watch the road, instead seeing her mom battle the unburied, before finally falling, much to her sorrow, the snake emblem torn from her tunic and held up by Calden as a sign of their victory. The story ends as teary-eyed Cassandra Cain sets off on another quest, contemplating the ties that bind us in life and death. That was the first arc of the new Batgirl ongoing.
I hate that it gives even the slightest attention or validation to that awful retcon.
But in all honesty, it was actually a really good story despite that.
What?
I didn't have very high expectations going in, since Cassandra, I feel, has been disrespected, shortchanged, and underappreciated by DC before. Even if other writers dealt with Orphan, I was always wary that they'd just be following in the unfortunate canon established by Tynion. Sure, they brought back this Batgirl suit, but again, that felt like a very easy, very cosmetic change, giving me little reason to be hyped about this title or the stories it'd tell. Still, I gave it as fair a shot as I'd give any comic, and I was pleasantly surprised. It feels like it succeeds where Rebirth Tech or the external books either failed or came up short, telling an interesting, emotional story with complex characters featuring a credible threat and nicely paced revelations about the nature of that threat. While it can feel long at times, like perhaps some things could have been trimmed down to make it shorter, I feel it was necessary to make us feel attached to characters like Jayesh, to see things beyond an oversimplified good versus evil narrative, and even see some social similarities between the Order of Shiva and the Unburied. And even if you took some of those elements out, what was left for the core of the story would probably have amounted to about 5 issues worth anyway. Sure, there's a little fat, but that's not always a bad thing. As it says in the Bob's Burgers cookbook one of my brothers got me for Christmas, fat equals flavor.
You haven't actually cooked anything in that book yet.
Hey, I'm busy. I like the premise of the Unburied, that after being exploited and attacked, they had enough and decided to take the fight to those who wronged them, and aren't going to simply trust that a new generation won't repeat past transgressions. They're mysterious, dangerous, and those abilities from the Blue Poppies give them an edge, at least when someone doesn't have to die acting as a magical bloodhound or bomb. It's unclear if the flowers are why Calden proved such a unique challenge for Cass, a blind dude who's so fast she can't predict or adapt to his moves, or maybe he's just that specially trained. Also, there's more intrigue for later, like the identity of the Unburied's leader. They could be anyone from a scrawny-looking old man that could collapse a building with one punch, or a middle-aged woman that's so bulked up the Hulk would tell her to cut back on the protein powder. Though the heart of the story is absolutely the complicated relationship between Cass and her mother. With their original history restored, it gives us a greater reason as to why she'd be slow to trust, or that she would want to do anything that isn't destructive or self-serving. However, as the danger escalates, we see them acquiesce, B-Girl more than Shiva, honestly, to try to work together, because no luck, only us, means they have to have each other's backs. It isn't always easy, but it does mostly work, like Cassandra infiltrating the Unburied's base and using instruction, or orders as some might see it, her mom gave her in the first 4 issues.
Wait, did you just give good advice?
I gotta go check the temperature in hell.
But what about all that loving her mom for those qualities she hates in herself? Does she like that she's a selfish, manipulative murderer?
No, it's just that there's something about her mom she can admire to a degree. She does wrong, but those same skills that can be used for good, not only demonstrated by the Order of Shiva, but Cass herself. And yet the fact that those skills can be deadly, even in her own gloved bat hands, is what she despises. And remember, Cass wanted to save her mom to prove she could save herself from her past sins. Perhaps we got a hint of that salvation when Wu San sacrifices herself to the people she betrayed, all to save her daughter. That being said, while the story, thankfully, heavily acknowledges and builds on the good history, there seems to be some contradictions with it. For example, Shiva saying she never wanted a daughter contrasts with her stating in the end of the first Batgirl title that the entire reason she bore a child with David Cain was in hopes of carrying on her own legacy. So either here she wanted a son and grew fond of Cassie, or maybe the remark was just to taunt her for some reason, like agitating her to get into fight mode for when the monks arrived. She also claims she always wins, but she lost to Cass a few times in Volume 1. So did she forget because of all the head trauma? Then there's Cassandra briefly dying in her 25th issue. She felt freed from the burden of killing Faizul, so for her to break down over it in her dreams seems like, well, the exact opposite. And kind of related, there's her worry that she's destined to be a killer like her mom, or is just as bad now.
Which is something mentioned in Tiny's Detective Comics run, with the same nature and who cares about nurture mentality.
Yeah, I criticized that then because it didn't feel very well founded. It doesn't get much more context here, so I still disagree with the notion, but reintegrating pre-Flashpoint canon would at least make this more plausible and understandable. Whereas Cassino, Orphan, killed one person and spent most of her time crying about everything under the sun, Cassandra Cain experienced a mental scenario where she would be driven to kill again, seeing her mentor and father figure murdered by the Joker. She killed Shiva once, though left her to drop in a Lazarus pit as kind of a cheat, and she was manipulated by Deathstroke to embrace the life of an assassin, killing a few more people. If this book had mentioned some of that, it'd make more sense that Cass would be worrying about abandoning her no-kill rule. This is less a refutation of my statements in the tech review, and more an amendment. But this is a better emotional narrative than the previous New 52 and onward stories with that other version of this character. A variety of feelings are displayed. Answers don't come easy. Conclusions don't feel rushed or yada-yada'd. Cassandra's thoughts on who counts as family is cleverly done, like stopping herself from calling David her father, or decking Shiva before she can call her daughter.
But what about that stuff about being the pride or heart of this or that Bat family member?
Well, some of those make sense, even if I disagree with others, and have no frame of reference for her friendship with Duke. At least bird droppings is rightfully excluded.
But I still hate that it acknowledges that f***ing retcon.
Yeah, and to that point, one of the reasons I was so skeptical about this everything is canon spiel is how the two very contradictory origins just work together with no explanation. There's still a lot I haven't seen laid out, so is it just that the first history totally happened, then the post-Flashpoint stuff happened afterwards somehow? Or does everyone just realize that something, aka Dr. Manhattan, muddled with reality for heaven knows why, and they moved on from there? I mean, Cass was 17 when she was introduced and aged at least a couple of years by the time she became Black Bat, but Orphan was 15 years old, and, well, the differences just accumulate from there. Maybe they're hoping readers will just not think about it, because who cares about continuity or something? I know some don't, and that's fine. Not everything needs to have some expansive lore. It's how Bugs Bunny can be on a pirate ship in the 1600s in one cartoon, then chilling with Humphrey Bogart in 1940s dance club in the next. But me, for this, I care. I don't think continuity is a terrible thing, nor is it some kind of creativity killer. Some things I just like a good, contextualized explanation for, as long as it isn't so heavily contrived, and isn't stupid. Though there are some things that puzzled me. Some of the wordplay felt less clever than maybe it seemed like when it was first scripted, mostly from Shiva, like she was trying to be cute or something. That bit with the monks getting washed away was kind of funny, but felt tonally out of place when the two just called them idiots. And I'm not sure why Calden had to kill those firefighters. Seems like his fellow warriors had been cleared out, and why would they need to eliminate any trace of Shiva's followers? In fact, it seems like it'd just make things more suspicious when those bodies are recovered and the coroner determines that cause of death for two firefighters was dramatic blade slices. I enjoyed the art. Nicely detailed, great designs for the unburied. The action and fight scenes are so well done. Like how it shows after images of Cass to demonstrate her speed and efficiency. It never feels over the top or bordering on ludicrous. Some places you really gotta pay attention, not to just seeing Cass way in the background during her surveillance, but also how the word sleep is spelled out in mist when she's knocked out. That is some real cleverness right there. Was this pose she's taking a nod to Batman the Animated Series? Because I think it's a nod to Batman the Animated Series. The coloring has a kind of grainy feel to it, which helps to give some scenes or rooms a dirty quality, or someone's injuries being blotchy, to show they've been smeared or dried up. Some issues have multiple two-page spreads, which is why I said earlier there could have been some trimming, but they're at least visually interesting and don't have a lot of negative space.
So, you're saying that
despite my reservations, my distaste for dumb reinventions, the excuses for them, and feeling repeatedly disappointed with DC to the point of not even wanting to bother giving them any more chances, this arc was really well done. It's not without some flaws or nitpicks, and it's not everything I personally would have preferred, but as far as the substantive return to form I had hoped for, It's a heck of a lot closer than I ever expected DC to manage. Frankly, this is what we should have gotten at Rebirth.
Then there'd be no references to Tiny and Stack Run. Does that mean Cassandra Cain is back?
Well, looks like they're at least on the right track. Hey, what's going... Okay, hope that doesn't become a regular thing. So yeah, if you love the original cast, I recommend this book and hope it keeps this momentum going. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.